Hello, Neogenians. Welcome to Dawn of the New Earth. Today, we are talking about the demon that can drag you straight to hell or transform you into a god. We are continuing to explore the Tree of Death, the Klipot, and the Tunnels of Set, aka the 22 Paths of Shadow. We are going to be exploring some more of the paths today, and they get very intense. This is going to be in a very important video. We're getting started right away, and as always, I want to remind you, this is way more than a channel. We are a revolution of consciousness here to wake the world the hell up. So make sure you hit like, subscribe, share this video so we can spread it like fire. We're literally reaching millions of people every month. And all your shares, all your likes, all your subscribes, they help so much. So hit that like button, hit that share, do all that. If you want to help out even more, become a member and you get access to a lot of great stuff. You get access to members only videos, access to videos before they go to the public, access to free downloads on inner transformation, alchemy, Kabbalah, etc., and a lot of other great stuff. So helps out a lot. Become a member. You can also check out my books, and the links to all of that are in the description of this video. Oh, as always as well, I have a Spotify channel now. That's a great free way to support. If you have a Spotify account, please go follow me on Spotify. We're reaching, we're at 10,000 over on Spotify, well over 10,000 now. So go over to Spotify, give me a follow. It's completely free and helps out a lot. Links to all of those things are in the description of this video, as well as the cards that we're going to be using today. If you enjoy the Paths of Shadow cards, the Shadow of the Tarot. Okay, so let us begin. Today, we are talking about the Tunnels of Set. We've been doing so for a while. And of course, this means, let me get my book out of the way here. This means, oh, I do have my diagram with me. We're talking about the Tree of Life and the Tree of Death. So as always, I'm just going to give a really quick crash course in a nutshell, a few paragraphs of what the heck these things even are. Because if you want to know more, watch my other videos, but this is just a quick rundown, okay? So, the Tree of Life is a diagram that symbolically represents the structure of your psyche or soul or consciousness. Each one of these spheres are called sephirot, and they represent levels of consciousness. So each one of these is a level of consciousness. The different paths that connect them are different lessons that you have to learn and integrate to reach these various levels of consciousness. So you start at the bottom and work your way up to the top. The Tree of Death is the shadow or corrupted versions of these levels of consciousness. So each one of the spheres on the Tree of Death is called a Klipot. So you have Sephirot, Klipot, and the Sephirot or Klipot, and they're the inverted shadow distorted versions. And you have the shadow versions of the paths as well, called the Paths of Shadow or the Tunnels of Set, either way. And they're essentially also lessons that you have to learn to clear up the blockages and distortions that prevent you from ascending to higher levels of consciousness. So, Tree of Life is represented by divine names and angels. The Tree of Death is represented by archons and archdemons. You want to align with the Tree of Life, you want to transform the Tree of Death. You align with angels, you transform demons. And the reason why that we use symbolism at all is because all of this is a kind of spiritual technology to connect to your unconscious mind, and your unconscious speaks and understands and communicates through the language of symbolism, not words, through symbolism. That's why we talk about things like angels and demons and tarot cards and planets and alchemy and all that stuff. Because they're symbols, not because it's literally about, beings flying around the sky with halos and feathers, or literal planets or literal demons or any of that. It's because that's how your unconscious communicates, and we want to connect to and communicate with our unconscious, okay? So that is what we are doing. We use symbolism to explore our subjective reality. If we were trying to explore the objective reality, we would use reason and mathematics. But that's not what we're doing. We are exploring the subjective realm, which deals in symbolism and story. That's how we connect with the unconscious domain. So today we are going to be talking about some of the paths of shadow. We have begun to cross the river of Lethe, and we're at some of the highest or lowest paths, depending on how you look at the tree. So the first path that we are going to be looking at here is called Tsufliu. And this connects Tigerian and Gahogiel. All right. So let me put this on screen so you can see what we're dealing with and what we're talking about here. This is Tsufliu, which connects Tigerian, and Tigerian is the shadow of Tiferet and represents corrupted ego, with Gahagiel, which is the shadow of Chokhmah. So psychologically speaking, this is the corruption of the ego, Tigerian, meeting the corruption of purpose and force in Gahagiel. Because in Chokhmah is essentially where your true will is found, your true purpose. In Kabbalah, what's known as the Chia. The Chia is your true power, your true purpose, your true will. In the Neo-Genian system, we call this the power self. So Gahagiel is the distortion of your power self, the distortion of your true will, the distortion of your purpose, combined with the distortion of the ego. And that is represented by this path right here, which is the path of Tsufliu, who is the sentinel along that path. Planetary-wise, it's the shadow of the sun, which is known as the black sun, fused with the shadow and distortion of Neptune, which is Dionysian madness. And this is the shadow of the emperor. Okay, Tsufliu is the shadow of the emperor, meaning this is the dark side. Okay, this is this is what we're learning about. This is what this path teaches us. This tunnel teaches us. This is the dark side of leadership, power, authority, and will. Now, not true will, but the counterfeit version of it distorted by ego. Okay? It's your true will distorted by ego. Corrupted ego leads to a corrupted purpose. Okay? So this is where power, right? The power of the emperor stops being about guidance and starts becoming about control. So here's what happens. When Tsufliu is the sentinel on this path, it is blocking you from achieving higher levels of consciousness. And either one of two things can happen with Tsufliu. Either you dominate or you are dominated. There's no middle ground here. No shared purpose, just force. So if you think of it like this, Tigerian corrupts your sense of self. Ego inflation. I am the center. Where Gahagiel corrupts your sense of purpose. Where instead of following your true will, you're following your egoic will, your personal desires, but as though it were your true will. And when those distortions merge, you get the shadow of the emperor. Power used to bend others to the ego's will. Now, this shows up, by the way, this sphere is also called the father. So this is the shadow of the father. So how this shows up is like, for example, using charisma to control and manipulate instead of inspiring. You can manipulate others' emotions to get what you want. Demand loyalty, needing everyone to follow you, forcing your worldview onto others. Instead of being a benevolent leader, being a dominant psychopath. But it can also show up in the other way as well, where instead of you being the dominant one, you let others dominate you. You give up your decisions to someone stronger. You begin to follow someone else's purpose, their personal purpose, rather than your own or your true purpose. And it keeps you small and under the foot, under the heel of someone else. So Tsufliu doesn't care which one it is. It's ultimately the same distortion. Both mean both mean you're disconnected from your chia, your true purpose, your true will, your power self, and you're acting from fear, not power, because you're disconnected from that, or you're using a malformed version of it. It's the ego trying to rule the kingdom without being connected to true purpose, okay? So that is what happens when Sufliu blocks you. Now, as always, remember that demons think that they're protecting you. Demonic forces are forces that have developed as defense mechanisms, often developed in childhood. But they are, now that we're no longer children, they are blocking us. So for example, what I mean by that is, Sufliu thinks it's protecting you because it thinks that essentially what happens is you either need to be the emperor or kneel before one. So it's an attempt to protect you by giving you power, basically saying like, oh, well, no one can hurt you if you stay on top. Or on the opposite side, when it pushes you to submit to a power, it's like, oh, letting someone else decide for you so you don't risk failure or you don't risk personal responsibility, etc. So both behaviors essentially come from fear, but in a way that's trying to protect you. Okay? So Sufliu is trying to protect you from uncertainty, responsibility, from vulnerability, from if you're the dominant one, from letting others dominate you, or if you're the one being dominated so that you don't have to have the burden of responsibility. But of course, the huge cost here is that it disconnects you from your true authentic will, your purpose, your power self, your chia. It disconnects you from that. So remember, what we always want to do with this is we want to integrate. We need to figure out how to transform this power. Remember, demonic forces, klipot, are about transformation. You're not trying to destroy them. That's not possible. You're trying to reorganize them. You're saying, hey, look, I have authority. I am the higher self. You work for me. And so we're going to redirect your energy to something that is beneficial for us, because it's a part of you. All of these forces are a part of you. Sufliu is a part of you. It's not the whole you. You are the higher self. So when you properly integrate the power of Sufliu, instead of seeking power over others, what you do is you begin to understand how to use the power of the emperor in service to your actual true will, your actual purpose, rather than your egoic desires and your insecurity. So this is what I mean, all right? So your true will, your chia, what we call in the Neogenian system, your power self, that is your purpose, the purpose that is connected with divinity, your divine purpose. That can show up differently for everyone. Some people are here to teach through literal teaching or through art. Some people are here to make music, etc. But it's not for a personal egoic reason, but rather to help transform the world and wake people up. Okay? So it's the thing that you were born to do, the thing that you do across lifetimes. They can be translated in different ways, but it's common. You have this commonality. So when you follow your purpose, there's a shift because you still tap in to that strong, forceful power, but you're using it in service to your in service to your true purpose. So what I mean is you can still be forceful in not like a violent way, but strong, persuasive, charismatic, influential. And you become a beacon that people tune into and listen to because you radiate this presence of power. But you're not using it for selfish reasons. You see the difference? You see how you're integrating this raw energy, this raw power, but you're redirecting it to something powerful. So you develop, by integrating Zufliyu, you work to develop a commanding presence. You cultivate confidence. You cultivate the ability to speak with authority. You develop charisma. You become inspiring. You become influential. You become persuasive. You understand the power of how you present yourself, your posture, your tone, your presence, your rhetoric, the way you speak, but not for tools for domination, but as tools to inspire and transmit. You become this living archetype that others can tune into for their own growth and inspiration. It's like walking into a room and being able to shift the energy with your presence. A real leader, not because you want mindless followers, but because you want to set people free and transform the world in whatever way that manifests for you and your purpose. The most important part here is you're no longer bending others to your personal egoic will, because you could use your charisma to do that. You could use your rhetoric to do that. You could use your presence to do that. You could use that. And guess what? Just look at people who rule the world today. There's a lot of people who do that. They are highly manipulative. And they do so to bend the will of others to their personal egoic will. And that's when you integrate Zufliyu, you retain the power that it provides of presence, influence, charisma, rhetoric, etc., being a leader, but you stop doing it in the way that you are bending others to your will. You gain the commanding power of the emperor and Zufliyu, but not for egoic personal desires, but rather for the true will. The power self, your purpose, your chia, that is in line with the universe itself, okay? So that is ultimately what Zufliyu represents. And because he's associated with the emperor as well, by the way, he's also associated with Mars and Aries. You can see the symbol of Mars here, and you can see the shadows take the form of the ram of Aries, and then you can see the world in the background being transformed red like Mars. So you need to really be able to take power of this sentinel and integrate it so it doesn't become a dominating force that manipulates others, or where you become manipulated by someone else. All right. So let's talk about some practical things that you can do for integrating this particular path. Remember that these practical exercises are just to get the ball rolling, to get you thinking in the right direction. Ultimately, there are many different ways you could do this, and you need to think about yourself and your life personally. But let me go to my notes here to talk about some examples. Okay, here's one. In terms of boundaries, identify a place in your life where someone else's will has been overriding yours. Think of a place in your life where someone else's will has been overriding yours. Could be a parent, could be a partner, could be a religious teacher, could be a political figure. And practice the ability to be able to say, I hear you, but I am choosing differently. And you can even say that to yourself. You don't necessarily have to confront someone about that, but you need to say it to yourself so that you are no longer having your will be transformed into someone else's. Here are some more ways. Take a public speaking class. Learn to speak with clarity, with confidence. And a structured public speaking class will train your tone, your posture, your pacing, your presence. On that note, practice a commanding posture in your daily life. Be aware of your posture and presence throughout the day and make it a habit to be grounded, back straight, Shoulders back, not rigid, but in a commanding presence. And you'll notice that two things will happen here. It'll shift your mindset. It'll make you feel more powerful. And it will also shift how people perceive you. Instead of being like hunched over and taking up as little space as possible, have the confidence to present yourself in an empowering way. Not in like a dominating asshole kind of way, but in an empowering way. Don't be afraid to take up space. Here's another one. Enroll in a debate or rhetoric workshop. Super important. Learn the art of argument. Learn how to communicate persuasively. You could have the best ideas in the world, but if you don't know how to communicate them persuasively, it's not going to do shit. Maybe like thousands of years from now. But as far as like making change in the world right now, you have great ideas? Great. How are you going to get them across? How are you going to get people to hear about them? How are you going to get people to wake up? Learn how to be persuasive. Learn how to communicate. Learn your posture. Learn how to speak confidently. Do a weekly purpose check-in. This is an important one. Once a week, or however often you want to do it, ask yourself, is the way I'm using my power aligned with my true purpose or with my insecurity? It's a very important one. Always do check-ins to see if you're following your true purpose or if your goals are based on insecurity. Are you trying to have a lot of followers on Instagram because it strokes your ego? Or is it because you want to have influence? Or perhaps even financial freedom so that you can pursue your purpose and your will. None of these things are wrong in and of themselves, but it depends the motivation behind it. Another one is study a leader who inspires you. A speaker, a thinker, a leader, even an artist, a musician, perhaps. Someone whose presence you admire, but try and pick someone chill. Like, I mean, I don't mean chill necessarily, but don't pick like, you know, an evil person. Try, okay. So pick someone who leads with clarity, and has positive intentions. That's not necessarily to say that you can't learn persuasive techniques from people who are assholes. You can, but you just want to be careful not to get. If you have the power not to be influenced by that, sure. But you always just have to be really, really careful on, you know, because your psyche is going to begin to form around influences. And if all your influences are asshole influences, you're probably going to start to become an asshole. Now, that's not necessarily true, but it can happen. You just need to be on guard for it. So basically, to be on the safe side when you're starting with this stuff, hey, pick people who are trying to help the world, or at least doing good in the world in some way, or waking people up in some way, or something like that. Okay. Okay. And let that inspire you to be able to actualize that kind of presence in yourself. Usually, you're inspired by people because in the Neogenian system, what's known as power self-projection, right? This is all about the power self and the power self-projection. Whenever we're dealing with chokhmah, whenever we're dealing with chokhmah, we're dealing with its shadow right here. This is always related to the power self, which is purpose, which is the chia. And power self-projection is basically you're often inspired or admire others because you secretly have that potential within you that wants to come out. You see it reflected in someone else, and so you praise and worship that object or person or thing or whatever it is, when really you should be actualizing it and cultivating it in yourself. Now, nothing wrong with having inspiration. Inspiration is fine, but you don't want it to turn into worship and infatuation and where you're giving your personal power and will away to someone else. All right, let's move on to the next path here, or tunnel. Let's see. All right. So the next path or tunnel that we're dealing with is Dagdagiel. Dagdagiel. Dagdagiel is the tunnel that connects Sateriel, which is the shadow of Binah, to Kahagiel, which we already saw is the shadow of Chokhmah. So psychologically, okay, we have, well, let's talk about the planetary correspondences to make this clear, okay? So we have the shadow of Saturn, which is the black cube of Saturn, which is the shadow of Neptune, which is Dionysian madness. Okay, so here basically we have force and chaos with restriction and boundaries. So you have this collision here. It's the black cube merging with Dionysian madness, which are very seemingly contrary to each other. This is about boundaries. This is about breaking boundaries. So the path that connects, or tunnel that connects these two, is Dagdagiel, which is the shadow of the Empress. Okay, so being that she's associated with the Empress is also associated with Venus. So it's the shadow of Venus, which is Vesper, and it represents the corruption of connection, love, sensuality, nature, unity, and intuition. The corruption of all those things. This is where love becomes boundaryless and reason becomes suffocation. You have these very big extremes here. Chaos and force and no boundaries, and boundary and restrictive suffocation. And so you get lost between these two extremes here. So let's talk about this. Dagdagiel blocks you in two possible ways, but equally destructive. One way is love without boundaries, which is the shadow of Neptune's influence, which means it pulls you into a state of total merging with no individuality, no separation, no boundaries. And so what can happen here is a lot of different things. You can feel overwhelming emotional openness, extreme sensuality, extreme need to merge with others, losing yourself in nature, the compulsive acceptance of everyone and everything, hypersexuality, saying yes to everyone, and dissolving your identity and wanting to be absorbed into oneness. This is the Empress's distorted, unconditional love, where you lose your sense of self. It's unity at the cost of individuality. And it accepts everything, including harmful things, because saying no seems like a betrayal of unity. It's a boundary. But the opposite can also occur here, where instead you're killed by overthinking. And this is the shadow Saturnian influence, the black cube of Saturn, the opposite extreme. Here, your mind becomes a womb that can no longer birth anything alive. Binah is considered the great womb that provides structure and is associated with the divine in terms of reason, logic, and analysis. Satariel is the concealer who analyzes to death. Your womb gives birth to only death. You analyze so hard that you forget to experience, which means overthinking spirituality, killing intuition with logic, and overanalyzing divinity instead of feeling it, becoming detached, cold, analytic, losing sensuality, pleasure, and connection. This is the philosopher who thinks themselves out of life. This is the womb that only produces stillborn ideas. Structured, defined, but devoid of the actual content of life, of joy, of spirit. So in that sense, Dagdagiel blocks you by disconnecting you from an embodied divinity. So we have these two extremes here with Dagdagiel. Either you dissolve into unity and experience, or the opposite extreme, you freeze into analysis. Can no longer be in the moment because you're constantly analyzing. Either way, you lose yourself. Now, as always, these sentinels think they're protecting you. Dagdagiel thinks that she's keeping you safe. If you're pushed to like total surrender and unity, it's because, oh, well, conflict hurts you. Boundaries hurt you. Just merge with everyone. Love everything and everyone. Don't say no to anybody or anything. Nothing can harm you. Lose your sense of self. Lose your individuality. Merge with the cosmic oneness. If you go into the opposite of extreme analysis, it's because the opposite, feeling is dangerous. If you understand everything, you'll never get hurt. You can analyze it to death. And both of these are an attempt to avoid pain. And both of these ultimately disconnects you in some way. Either unity without individuality, reason without feeling, analysis without life. So it's either no boundaries or too many boundaries. You want both. So Dagdagiel is trying to basically protect you through either smothering or restricting. But when you integrate Dagdagiel, that split collapses. You don't dissolve into a undifferentiated cosmic unity, and neither do you freeze yourself in endless analysis and overthinking. Instead, you learn how to do both. You can feel a deep sense of unity with nature and others while still staying rooted in your own individuality. You can experience connection without losing yourself. And you understand how to think rationally and logically without disconnecting you from the lived experience of life and what it is to be reality experiencing itself. So this is where now you have the power of Dagdagiel in a way where you are grounded and structured, where you can have these mystical, ecstatic experiences where you're being connected and experiencing the divine and unity without losing your mind, without losing your intellect, without losing your reason, without losing your individuality. You can connect with nature and beauty and divinity without dissolving your identity into them. Because remember, we are one and many. So this allows you to understand the architecture of reality without suffocating the life of reality through overthinking and overanalysis. Basically, what this means is it's not like you have to choose between mind and heart or between unity and individuality. Both can and should exist together. And that's the real secret here. You are an individual expression of an eternal unity. You're both at the same time. You are one and many. We are one and many. So when you integrate Dagdagiel, you gain the experience, the ability to experience the divine through altered states of consciousness, emotion, intuition, being present, while also understanding it consciously through reason, insight, structure, and analysis. So you can become the lover and the philosopher at the same time. So it's about understanding reality structurally and living reality as a unity. You want both. So let's talk about some practical exercises for integration. Let me get up my notes here. This is an important one. Learn how to be sensually present. Spend 5 minutes focusing on a sensual experience. So it could be just pick, like, could be music, could be scent, could be touch, could be food, whatever it is. Don't analyze it and don't be distracted by something else, but rather immerse yourself in the moment, in the experience of it. Okay? But let's talk about another way to integrate this, because it's important to be well-rounded. So let's talk about something similar where you go basically take a walk outside in nature, preferably. It doesn't have to be, but preferably nature. Now, it's going to take about 30 minutes in total. Spend 10 minutes while you walk paying only attention to sensation. Don't analyze anything. Don't think about anything. Just be in the moment. Feel the temperature on your skin, the movement of your body, the feeling of the wind on your face, the ground under your feet, the sounds, the colors, the lights. Don't analyze anything. Just be in it. Just feel it. Be immersed in it. Feel connected. For 10 minutes, do that. Then take another 10 minutes. Do the opposite. This time, only focus on structure. Analyze what's around you. Look at all the patterns, the fractal-like nature of the leaves on the tree, how everything is a interacting system, from the wind that moves the leaves, that makes the fruit drop, that the insect then eats, who lays eggs, that et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Look at how everything connects. Notice the patterns, the architecture of what you're seeing. Analyze how everything is structured as a system, an interacting system. Then, finally, when you're ready, take a final 10 minutes where you do both sensation and structure. Feel everything around you as that unity, while being consciously aware of that unfolding structure and pattern around you. Both, merge the two, and realize the importance of both of those things. The importance of being embodied and connected and here and now and experiencing unity, while also understanding how the things work and connect and fit together and unfold, and the causal chains of reality. Really important exercise. And this is a very important one because most people are either one or the other. You'll meet people who just analyze everything, or people who just feel everything. You meet a lot of people in the spiritual community who almost see reason as their enemy. Like, oh, it's all about experiencing the divine, man. That's part of it. It's a big part of it. But it's also about understanding how it works. It's funny because often, in spiritual communities, you'll see people who are like opposed to reason and logic and mathematics, etc., while also being like, oh, sacred geometry is how reality works. Everything is geometrical. Well, that means everything is structured and ordered according to a pattern. We are all these patterns. That's what we are. We are a pattern that is trying out all the various permutations of those patterns that we can. We're a kaleidoscope experiencing its different patterns. But if you couldn't see the kaleidoscope, you'd lose all the life. You lose all the vibrancy. So you want to understand how the kaleidoscope works and also have the immersion of experiencing it as well. All right. Let's move on to the next path. Put Dagdagiel up here. So now we move into this tunnel known as Gargophius. Let's zoom in here so you can get a better look at this. Gargophius. So this is one of the most important paths. Okay? This is one of the most important paths because it connects to Girion, which is the corruption of Tiferet, to Talmiel, which is the corruption of Keter. So this is incredibly important because this represents your ego self. This represents your higher self. So this path literally connects your ego self to your higher self. This is key. I can't emphasize enough how important this path is in terms of Jungian psychology. This is known as the ego self axis. Axis, like A-X-I-S, not access, but axis. This is incredibly important. This is the ego's connection to the higher self. So here in this tunnel, we have the distorted ego's connection to the distorted interpretation of the higher self. This is unity. This is disconnection and division. This is the ego in service to the higher self. This is the corrupted ego. Okay? So this is the distorted ego reaching upward to the distorted higher self. And I say that in the higher self in quotations because we're encountering a distorted interpretation of it. Okay? It's basically the part of you that wants to be divine, but in the wrong way, in a distorted way. Planetary wise, this is the shadow of the sun, the black sun, connected to the shadow of Pluto, which is the void of the Pluto and Chiron binary system. Pluto and its moon forms a binary system with a void between them. Gargophius is the shadow of the high priestess. And the shadow of the high priestess, or the high priestess, or the shadow. So this is a distortion of intuition, inner knowing, mysticism, and connection to the higher self. But that connection becomes distorted here. So here's how. When Gargophius blocks you, you become aware of your higher self, but in a corrupted way. You start thinking that your higher self can exist separately from the absolute, as though you are God independently, rather than being a divine expression of the all. You begin to see yourself as being an isolated deity. And this is where left-hand path often goes way off the rails here, because it has this huge distortion. And it gets very dangerous here. This is very, very dangerous. Okay? Because instead of remembering that the higher self is part of a unified network, you begin to believe that your higher self either stands above that network or can break off and disconnect from it. So to better give you an idea of what I'm talking about here, let me bring in a diagram. Let me see if I can zoom in and if you can still see it. Yeah, that's fine. So let's talk about this. This here represents your egoic self, your egoic identity. Okay? This represents your higher self, an eternal soul composed of frequencies. This, what I call the garden of life or the garden of light, represents the collective of souls together. Okay? So if this represents one soul, if you notice, every circle within this symbol is another flower of life. So there's one of these here and 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 here. It's a network. It's a multiplicity of these. Okay? This cannot exist independently from this. Just like you can't exist independently from this. Okay? So this is connected to this, and this is connected to this. This is your higher self. This is the absolute, which is the collective of all eternal souls, all zetas, all eternal minds together. What MorgueOfficial tries to do, and what often left-hand path tries to do, is basically say that you can break off from this and go off and be your own individual God. That is not possible. You cannot do that. It breaks the laws of logic. We are all within an interconnected system. We always form an overarching system. Always. It is a logical impossibility for it to be otherwise. As soon as you have two elements, more than one element, the relationship between those two elements form a unity, which is the relationship of them between the two. So this cannot break off from this. Now, here's the thing, though, is that the reason why MorgueOfficial presents it this way, and why a lot of left-hand pathers choose this, is because they essentially don't want to be dissolved into a cosmic unity. But here's the point, is that on how reality actually works, you don't dissolve. You can see that there are individual nodes within the unity. So basically, kind of what right-hand path says is that you dissolve into a cosmic unity where there's no individuality at all, okay? So it'd just be like one blob, not these individual circles. So right-hand path says you dissolve into divinity, lose your individuality. Left-hand path goes, I don't want to do that, so I'm going to break off from the unity. But that's not how it works. Both of them, both right-hand and left-hand path are they're seeing two sides of a coin and thinking that that's the side. What actually happens is that you don't dissolve into an undifferentiated oneness. You don't dissolve, you exist as an individual, but within a network. So you're not going to be lost or dissolved into the all. And you're not going to break off from it. Rather, you exist within a network, okay? So Gargophius essentially tries to tell you that you can disconnect from the absolute. And this is very dangerous, okay? Because this is the for a lot of reasons, okay? It can lead to, when you start believing that you can exist independently from the absolute, you can be driven to pursue very dangerous choices because you are no longer taking into account the effect that you have on the network as being expressions of you. This is us. This is you, this is you, this is you in different forms. This is you as the absolute network. This is you as the network expressing itself as an individual mind. This is you as the individual mind being able to operate in the field of consciousness and physical reality and social situations. You at different levels. And us. You and us as well. Okay? So, if you believe that you are separate from this, you are no longer seeing others as aspects of you in an interconnected system. Thus, it can lead to very ethically dangerous situations. Because if you understand that you are connected in this, and this is all an expression of us, well, then you're not going to fuck with other people, because fucking with someone else is like hitting your own hand with a hammer. Because they're all expressions of us. We're all in this together. We're all connected. So, Gargophius tries to disconnect you from others and the absolute. And that's the real meaning of hell. Hell isn't a fiery pit. Hell is a state of consciousness that is based on disconnection. Disconnection, in this case, from others and the absolute. It can also include disconnection from yourself, because ultimately it's your disconnection from your absolute self, but it's disconnection in general. Others, the absolute, yourself, disconnection. And that's hell consciousness. And this is detaching, believing that you are above or disconnected, isolated in your higher knowing, rejecting unity because you fear losing identity and individuality. But this can result also in a kind of very cold cosmic loneliness. You can sense your higher self, but you've cut yourself off from the absolute. You think that you're awake and aware and enlightened, but you've actually severed yourself off from the source. Instead of I am God, it's that I am God and there is no other. It's the Jehovah mentality, the Yahweh mentality, the Demiurgus mentality, the Yaldabaoth mentality, the Archonic mentality. It's I am God and so is everyone else. So Gargophius blocks you by tempting you with this counterfeit divinity. This false divinity, this dark divinity, a version of your higher self, but that's isolated and separate and alone. Just like you can have the distortion that your ego self is your true self, when that's not true. Your higher self is your true self. But even when you become aware of your higher self, you can still not have the awareness of your absolute self, right? And these three forms are critical and key. Someone operating purely from this consciousness, we're gonna have a shitty world. Operating from just this consciousness, still a shitty world. It is a malformed understanding of consciousness and enlightenment. But from this, that contains this and this within it, that is hyper-awareness, that is the goal. Now, of course, Gargophius thinks that it's protecting you. And this is a huge spiritual protection of the fear of losing your individuality. The fear of being absorbed into a unity, losing yourself. Now, this isn't even on the level of the ego here. I'm talking about in terms of your higher self, just losing yourself completely. It tries to protect you from that. If you stand apart, no one can hurt you. If you're your own God, you don't have to worry about being dissolved into something else. It's kind of like spiritual quarantine. You feel like you're empowered, but you're really starving yourself and putting yourself in hell. And I really want to emphasize this, because just like right-hand path gets a lot of stuff wrong, so does left-hand path. You need both your hands. You need both your feet. You need both halves of your brain to be complete. So it's very dangerous to begin to believe that you can be divine apart from the interconnected network. You don't become divine, you become a Satan. That is the archetype of Satan, the one that believed that it could be higher than God. And that's the archetype of Yahweh in its corrupted form. Yahweh as Jehovah, as the Demiurgus, Yaldabaoth, who says, I am God and there is no other, when really that is not the case. Okay? All right, so when you integrate Gargothius, everything changes. Because you gain the power of that individuality, which is key. Because individuality is a very powerful and important thing. That's why all these systems that are obsessed with, destroying your ego and losing your individuality, blah, blah, blah. You want to bypass the ego. You want to not identify with the ego. And when it comes to your eternal and higher self, you want to be a powerful individual, a powerful node within the absolute network. So when you integrate Gargothius, you realize that you are an individual expression of the absolute. That you are a unique, powerful, eternal mind within a unified network. So in the Neogenian system, we call the eternal mind, the soul, a zeta. So a zeta is not a drop of water that's dissolved into the ocean. A zeta is a distinct collection of frequency patterns in an individual unit, soul, mind, within the absolute network. So when you integrate Gargothius, you are able to connect to your higher self very deeply, clearly, and powerfully without imagining that it stands apart from the absolute or divinity or whatever you want to call it. That is an illusion. That is a lie. That cannot occur. It's a logical impossibility. We are all in this together. We are all connected together. If that was not the case, you wouldn't even be aware of others. We would be an isolated systems that could never interact with each other whatsoever. That's not a possibility. If it were, it would be horrific, because you would literally be all alone, not able to interact with anyone else. Because if you interacted with anyone else, that would form a network of you plus whoever it is that you're interacting with. So if you could do that you can't, but if you could, it would be hell. You would be alone, eternally, isolated, disconnected. That is hell. That is hell consciousness. But it's impossible. And I understand why people are sometimes drawn to that, because with mainstream religion, it's beaten into our head, submit, 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 and even like spirituality, it's like, dissolve into God. It's very anti-individual. But it's both. It's about both. It's about the collective and the individual. It's about the one and the many. It's about the left and the right, together, unified, working together. So when you integrate Gargophius, you realize that your individuality is not a barrier to unity, but it's the way unity expresses itself through you. Individuality is not an enemy to unity. You want to be a powerful individual to make a strong network. That's the point. We are a strong network through the power of our individualities, networking and working together as a collective. You build your Zadic consciousness. That Zadic consciousness, which is the awareness of your eternal identity across lifetimes. Now, I'm not saying you literally have to remember all your past lives or anything like that. If you can and do, and that's great, that's fine. But you crystallize that identity of yourself as an eternal soul that has existed across lifetimes, but not isolated, within a network, which is also you, but in the absolute, which is us exploring ourselves through individuals. So therefore, you can be connected to and feel that connection to the absolute, and you don't have to dissolve into it. That's the power that Gargophius gives you. And I'll tell you a hint here is that we're going to talk about Satan next week, and Gargophius goes right through Satan, and that's why her head is located right at the Satan klipot. And we're going to talk about Satan next week, but essentially you gain the power of, this is the beginning of gaining the satanic power, which is not a bad thing. It's scary. But remember, all of these are parts of you. And the satanic power is the power of individuality. Now, distorted, it's one of the most destructive things, where people are climbing, dog eat dog, tooth and nail, eat or be eaten, kill or be killed. But when you transform that energy into light, you crystallize your eternal self within the absolute self and become an extremely powerful aspect. So when you integrate Gargophius, the sentinel, this power, lets you stand strong as your higher self, a powerful individual God, while still feeling and understanding your connection to the absolute network of gods. This God network. You stop trying to be above it or cut off from it, and instead recognize that it is all us. You don't lose your individuality. And you don't lose your connection to unity. You keep both. You become the eternal mind, the Zeta, aware of yourself across time, but always with respect and in connection to the absolute network. All right, let's see. Let me look to my notes to get some integration exercises here. So basically what's happening to integrate this tunnel, what you're working on is to strengthen your sense of eternal individuality while also being connected to unity. So here's an exercise you can do. Sit quietly and imagine your higher self standing behind you, like a great light. Then imagine a network of countless lights stretching infinitely in all directions, And each one is another eternal mind, another soul, another zeta, another higher self of someone. And feel that network of eternal lights connected. Okay? And then feel yourself as one individual light among many. And then feel yourself as the entire network as well. Feel both the individuality and the connection. Essentially, what you're doing is you're doing a mental exercise, kind of visualizing this. You're imagining your higher self standing there behind you, but then a network of lights. And you can feel yourself as an individual within the network and as the network itself. Okay? So MorgueOfficial is really about crystallizing your identity, which is kind of the opposite. I mean, this is, why we're working with the tree of death. This is the opposite of kind of like, oh, dissolve yourself, dissolve yourself, dissolve yourself, dissolve yourself. We get hit with that enough. And it's important to be able to do that. It's important to be able to understand that your ego self isn't your true self, and the absolute network is a unity that we're all connected to. But it's kind of like in terms of your ego self, right? If you just are like, oh, you know what, I'm just going to destroy my ego and go live in the mountains and just meditate 15 hours a day and do that my whole life. I mean, there's nothing necessarily, if that's how you want to live your life, that's fine. But you're not going to change the world doing that. If your goal is to be a force of transformation, you're sitting in a cave all day. So likewise, your higher self needs to be strong and powerful, okay? You need to be able to have a strong and powerful ego. You need to have a strong and powerful Zedic self so that you can be effective within the network. Hopefully that makes sense. It's a really, really key thing here, and easy to misunderstand. It's misunderstood so much in spiritual communities. But this is really key to all this. All of this is about balance. It's not right or left. It's not one or many. It's all. It's all things. All of these things together. Let's see. Okay, here's another one. You can keep like a journal, or not even a journal. Just whatever, notebook, whatever. Just write this, write something like this. I have lived many lifetimes. What part feels like it has always been with me? In other words, just try and feel like a connection to something that is not your egoic identity, that has persisted across lifetimes. It's a thought experiment. And of course, we are going to be evolving across lifetimes, but there are probably overarching patterns that have been with us. Those could change, but have persisted likely across multiple lifetimes. So what I mean is, your egoic identity is, oh, I am Jane, who is a doctor and has a family and blah, blah, blah. But maybe your essence of your higher self has to do with healing. And in your current incarnation or localization, that gets expressed as being a doctor. But maybe you healed in a past life in another way, healed through music, healed through love, healed through being a therapist, healed through being a musician, healed through art. But there's that underlying pattern that is persistent. That itself can change, but it's about getting to your core essence, the underlying, why did I become a doctor? Now, maybe you just did because your parents pressured you to do it because they wanted you to make a lot of money. But you get what I mean. It's not always going to show up if you've been blocked by societal expectations, parents, religion, etc. Your purpose, your essence can be blocked. Your chia, your power self, your purpose can be blocked. But search for that. And this is about having an awareness of your Zedic self, your higher self, your true self, your soul self. Right? And then realizing, of course, that you exist within that connectivity, that unity. So if we look at the different cards that we have explored today, we had Sufliu, which is about understanding how to be influential and powerful so that you can actualize your true purpose and your true will, your power self. Dagdagiel was about not, realizing that you are not dissolved into a cosmic unity, neither being wrapped up in overthinking so that you produce stillborn ideas, but understanding how to be balanced in both experience of unity and rational analysis, both together. And then we have Gargophius, which is about realizing that you have the power to be an eternal, infinite, or that you are an eternal, powerful, infinite mind, and to not be ashamed of that or think it is something that you have to destroy or think that you have to dissolve into something, that we are both one and many at the same time, a powerful, strong node in the absolute collective of which we all are. And next week, we have 3 more paths that we are going to explore, tunnels that we're going to explore. But as always, tell me in the comments if you enjoyed this, what you liked. If you tell me which card you relate to as well, or resonate with the most, I'd be interested to see what you have to say. But as always, my friends, remember, this is way more than a channel. We are a revolution of consciousness here to set fire to the world. We need a new earth now. So hit like, subscribe, share this video, spread it like fire, metaphorically, of course. And if you want to help out even more, become a member. You get access to a lot of great stuff when you become a member. Free downloads on inner transformation and alchemy and Kabbalah and rituals, as well as access to members-only videos. We have tons of members-only videos, as well as early access to videos before they're released to the public, and a lot more. Check it out. There's a lot of great stuff there. It helps out a lot. And you can also check out my books. And if you're looking for a free way to support, great free way to support is follow me over on Spotify. We have, we're growing really strong over there, and that's another great medium to reach even more people. So links to all of those things. Oh yeah, and if you want to check out, if you want these cards, you can purchase them in the description as well. Anyway, links to all of those things are in the description of this video. Check them out. I appreciate your support, my friends, and big shout out to everyone who supports, especially Renaissance Fairy, Cassidy, Angela, Dallas, Nusalina, Chris Magistus, Eric, Sandy, Soul, Tornado, Son of God, right? Is that Rev? Yes. Solange, Trickster, and Banshee, and everyone else. Thank you very much, and Ad Astra.